Hey friends, this is Jakir King. I'm back to share with you more of my experience using the Luna recording system. Spent the last year and a half working with Universal Audio on consulting and advising in terms of the development and presentation of Luna. And I now want to invite you to kind of come look with me inside the session that I recorded in December for Cass McCombs. The song is called Wine of Lebanon. It'll be delivered to users as a free download if you choose to download it, and you can explore this session and its content. So let's go and have a look inside the Luna recording system. What's going to feel really familiar is that in the same way that Pro Tools is an edit page and a mixer page, that's the way Luna works. We've got our edit page and our mixer page. Let's just talk about the edit page first a little bit. I just kind of want to give you a little bit of the lay of the land. Over here to the left is this bucket where it basically is the main menu for most of the things that you're going to want to do. If I want to change my bass bus routing, right? There will be a menu over here where I can change my assignment. If I want to change my view, I can change it from volume as I have it right now over to clips. Like I said before, the audio is always in warp mode, and you can set it up so that it defaults so that if you're changing your timeline in your MIDI, that your audio will stay locked to its original state versus warping. But the capability of warp is always there. It always exists. If you want to, track name. Track name, you can change these things over here. You can search for things and look for the vocal. There's information down here at the bottom about your sample rate, the clock. This over here to the right will look familiar from the console application. As I said, all of the console stuff is sort of just baked into Luna, and you never have to go to the console app. It still exists and is running in the background, and you can open it and see some of the functionality that you're setting up in Luna reflected, mirrored there. It needs to exist so that if you want to, maybe you're doing some things in Luna, but you need to go back to your familiar environment that you've been using, Logic, say, because you got an instrument over there you want to use. So console exists, but all of its functionality is kind of baked in here. The top of the screen looks very familiar to most DAWs. Pro Tools is the one I have used the most. So you got your transport control, your BPM, your counter. Also up here at the top you have the different modes, if you will. So right now we're in mix mode, and so I have the controls over what kind of soloing I want to have, and there's a global timeline up here. We switch it to record. It's going to give me things like pre and post roll. If I'm sending the click to the cues, what the cue outputs are. There's different statuses of MIDI merge and how MIDI is being handled. There's also a little keyboard that you can use your computer keyboard as an input device for the instruments. And then lastly, we have edit, where there's a actual soft button for all of the keystrokes that you would normally use in editing. I would say that in my experience, they're not all exactly the same 100%, but for the most part, the keystrokes and key commands are the same as Pro Tools, so it feels very familiar. Some of that stuff is customizable. The only one that I've really found that I'm missing is the ability to heel clips back together, which isn't something that's implemented yet. It's been discussed. What I want to focus on, and what everybody should be focused on with Luna, is what is here in the system and how great it sounds, how pretty user-friendly it is. It's very thorough, and it's a fast workflow, and it's simple. And there are things that don't yet exist in the system. So this is where you adjust your track heights here, and waveform, just like in Pro Tools, the scaling of the waveforms. Right here, you open this little bucket, is where the versions are. And this is the same as playlists. You have the ability to add a new version, duplicate a version, edit the version name, and then you can delete the current version. You have volume panning control here, as well as your input and output assignment. And then you can select the warp mode, and then it's basically the time or tempo based, and then my automation. Right now we have everything in Reid. If you hold Option, you can change it for everything, and then your view, where you can look at the clip, or you could look at volume automation. We have clip gain, we have volume setting for each clip, and then you also, which I really am excited about, you can individually change the pitch of clips. So, which is kind of nice for a little bit of a tuning, or instead of using a plug-in to pitch shift something, you can just do it right in the clip. I think that's going to be a really fun, a little fun feature to have as part of the clip. It defaults to slip mode, basically. It's not locked to the grid. All the Universal Audio plug-in emulations are handled by a DSP that's in the Apollo. The console emulation, the tape emulation, third-party plugins, all of those are handled by the host, and they're run natively. So the DSP in the Apollo is focused on record path stuff, the Unison technology, keeping that the ability to use those emulations and the record paths with very low latency. That processing is done in the hardware DSP, and headphone management and routing to kind of keep all the low latency advantages in play. Before we switch over to the mixer page, let's just look at a couple more things. Let's go in and look more specifically at the multi-tool and how some of those things work. So there isn't yet edit groups. So that's it's coming very, very soon. I would say in the next couple releases, updates, which will be coming out fairly frequently. I think the plan is to not do big stage releases. They're kind of just, as they can get things done and implemented, they'll keep updating. So if you want to, with drums, if you want to edit multiple tracks, you have to make sure that you have them all selected. You can select them over here, or you can drag, but there aren't yet edit groups. It slows you down a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. It's manageable, and it's coming soon. Okay, so we're going to make an edit here. Let's just look at this kick drum. So I separated the clip, Command E, same as Pro Tools. The way I'm zooming in, same as Pro Tools. Now you can see where the multi-tool kind of comes into play. Select the clip, and then you have to change the region boundary, and then in the middle it's a crossfade. Towards the top it's a fade, and then you can also, so we put a fade in there, you can also grab the fade and change the shape. Okay, there are batch fades available. You can make a selection, Command F, it'll do a fade. So I really like that. All that stuff is very familiar. The only thing that's really lacking, and you can work around it, are the edit groups in terms of editing. Pretty much everything else works the same key command wise. Copy, paste, the separation. Let's switch over to the mixer page, and we can talk a little bit more about the mixing architecture, tape emulation, where inserts fall, just kind of get a little bit more of a lay of land of that. Let's look at some of these the features in the console. Let's look at the tape first. I have it in the small format, so we just see the mode of the tape emulation being on or off. You can do it individually or globally, modify it with the Option key. You might notice that with the tape engaged, we get a little bit of the noise floor. So if anybody was curious, that's what that's about. Right now I have it in the small view, go to large, and then we get into where you can adjust the record and playback bias and high-low frequency stuff. You can customize each channel for its sound quality in terms of the way the tape emulation is working. You have the saturation knob to change the amount of level that you'd be putting on the tape, so that you can also individually customize that per track. On your input, like I explained before, if I had a different interface hooked up, you would see that the ability to have the Unison technology involved here, where you would select a mic pre, put in like an API mic pre. when you get this session and you have an Apollo that's equipped with the mic pre's, you will see the emulations and the record paths that I used. Right now it's not in this session because I'm on an Apollo 16, but when you download and look at this session, you'll be able to investigate that. So the inserts are post-tape, and now these are the inserts that are just for monitoring only. And you can see I've got some things going here for the mix. A lot of EQs. You can use third-party EQs. I love FabFilter. It's something I use a lot. Got a couple of the Blue Stripe 1176s, Capital Chambers here on my vocal reverb return. The limitations of tracks and processing is only dictated by the amount of DSP you have on your Apollo and the power of your computer. There are no track limitations. It'll go as far as your processing power will allow. So I mean, I'm super happy that that Universal Audio has embraced being able to use all the plugins that we're familiar with. And so these insert sends are post the recorded sound and post tape. You know, one of the things that's really fast about the workflow that I love is when you create a new console path, it just shows up in the I/O setup as a destination. So when you create a, let's just do it here. We say new track. It asks what, so what type of track? Okay, so it's a bus. It's like a console thing. And then you can choose what type of summing. You can either have, at this point, you can have none or you can have Neve summing. In the future, there will be implementation to use other things like your API vision strip or your SSL. You can change and customize the sound of this console in the future. Right now, it's Neve based, which sounds amazing. And this is where we can name this bus. We're just going to call it test bus. For the sake of example, in my sends, I will have it available over here as an assignment. It saves a little bit of time in terms of having to call up a bus and make sure that the routing is matching up and picking a destination. It just saves a couple steps in there. It's creating a channel on the console and just sort of virtually creating that patch point for you in your routing. Got an Echoplex return for the vocal, and as you can see, that just kind of comes up as an available send on the vocal. And like I said, just again, any sort of routing and choice you're going to make, it's always going to pop up on this left-hand side in this bucket over here. And then we have our Q sends. All that stuff is ready to go. There are 4 stereo Qs. In the future, this is going to be changed so that there will also be mono headphone sends that are available. Any sort of console bus path that you create sort of shows up here, and you can route the output to any available busing input. So this little button here is the accelerated recording monitor. What this is, puts it in low latency mode. It's specifically designed to be implemented when you're recording audio and keeping the processing at the absolute minimum of latency, so that headphone monitoring and record paths and playback stuff is all synced up to be at the lowest latency. One of my favorite things about Luna is this implementation in the mixer window of something that's called spill. It's a focus feature. So if I select the spill on my bass bus, what it brings into focus are the things that are associated with that bus. So it shows me the 2 tracks that I have that are feeding my bass bus, and the destination, which is the main output for my bass bus. Now what I really like about this feature is that it also is reflected in the edit page. It's a really easy way to have both environments and not have to do a lot of scrolling around and be very focused on only the audio that's associated with that path. And another thing that I really like about it is now that I'm mixing this song, I have all my different buses here. So I have my bass bus, drum bus, guitar, and on and on. They're arranged in a way that you maybe like on a big SSL console where you'd have your VCA groups, so that your volume control for your whole drum setup that may be way down on the other end of the console, or even in the box, you got to scroll way over to get to it. It just brings it. It's all just always right in front of you, and I like that ability to put all of my buses together down here at the end of my console next to my main processing. So you can see where this is basically my mix bus processing, and I've got the ability to engage the spill and see all of the associated tracks with the string bus or the drum bus, and just makes the mixing and the editing all that more focused and easy. It just condenses it. There's nothing else to look at. I'm really enjoying that. Even as I've been mixing, there's been a few little edit things that I want to refine, and because I'm mixing, I'm mostly in the mixer page. If I want to make a vocal edit, just hit the spill, and not only can I see just my associated tracks and the plugins and so forth, but then I'm only looking at the audio that's associated with the vocal bus in the edit page. I think that that's really powerful and useful, and it's just one of those small things that makes it feel like an analog mixing environment. It just kind of makes things more immediate, a little bit more tactile. So let's now just talk a little bit about this song. Let's listen to a little bit of it, and then we'll get into what some of the individual components are, where I'm at in the mix, and just go from there.